Hey everyone, this is Matt Hendricks with the Sharpening Guy, and this is just an inexpensive Victorinox kitchen knife, and you can see it's dull. I've sharpened it before, but it just got dull, so it's time to resharpen it. And I'm going to show you how to resharpen a standard Western kitchen knife like this on your own with water stones. So all you really need is a medium grit stone. This happens to be a 1000 grit Japanese water stone, and a fine grit stone. This particular one is an 8000 grit Japanese water stone. That being said, I actually generally would use a 1000 and a 6000. Now, if you want, these two stones are plenty and you don't really need anything else. But if you want to speed it up a little bit, or if you have a knife that needs a lot of work, you could also use a rough water stone like this one. And this particular one is a 400 grit. Of course, if your knife also needs a lot of work, you could send it to somebody like me, and I could do that for you with the equipment in my shop. So anyway, so like I said, this knife is in pretty good shape. It's just dull, so we need to resharpen it. So most Western knives like this are taper ground, meaning they're thicker at the spine and then they taper down towards the edge. And so each time you sharpen the edge, you get back into thicker steel. So the first thing we want to do is we just want to thin out just a little bit behind the edge. And we don't have to do a lot because, like I said, this knife is in good shape and I've already, sharpened it previously. But we just want to do a little bit so that when we sharpen the edge, we're also thinning out the steel right behind the edge so that the blade doesn't get really fat right here. And so it will still push through food easily. So I'm just going to lay the blade flat on the stone and then raise the spine up slightly like this to the angle I want to thin at, which should be really low. And then I'm going to hold the knife like this so I can control the angle and move from my shoulder with my right hand. And then with my left hand, I'm just going to push on the blade where I want to remove steel. And you can obviously go slower than this, but there's also no real need to go slower with this once you get the hang of it. So this particular water stone I'm using is a soaking stone, so I soaked it in water before I used it, and I just keep it wet when I'm using it. The other two stones that I'm using and that I showed you are splash and go stones, so you just have to splash water on them before you use them. And so if you were using stones like that at home, they'd be really convenient because you wouldn't need anywhere to soak your stones. And you could do this part just on your medium stone too. The rough stone just makes it go faster. So anyway, I've thinned out enough. Like I said, this knife was already in good shape. If I hadn't sharpened it before, then I'd have to do a lot more thinning than that. So anyway, now I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to raise the spine of the knife up slightly more than I thinned at, just to get to the edge bevel. You don't need to sharpen way up here, especially on a kitchen knife. You're just cutting fruits, vegetables, meat, stuff like that. So a nice low angle should work well. And after I do a little on one side, I'm going to check for a burr. So if I grind on this side, when I started, the blade was round like this on the edge. And so I'm going to grind metal away from the edge on each side, so like this, until the edge looks triangular like this. And whichever side I grind on, say I'm grinding over here, there will be a wire edge or a burr that's going to form on the other side. So if I run my hand down this side of the blade, I'm going to feel it. So for instance, I was grinding on this side, and if I run my fingers off the blade here, I can feel the wire edge. If I run my hand on this side of the blade, I can't, because it's rolled up this way. So I'm just going to do this side quick, and we'll see. Yep, and I already have a wire edge on that side. And that's because, like I said, the knife was in good shape and it's thin enough to where I don't have to spend a lot of time getting down to a triangular edge. So anyway, I'm done with the rough stone. And so, like I said, this is a 1,000 grit stone. It's just a splash and go stone, which makes it easy. And I'm just going to sharpen a little bit at my thinning angle again, just to polish those stretches on the side of the blade up to a little bit finer grit. And that won't take long, just a few strokes like that. There we go. And then back to my edge bevel. So raise the spine up a little bit more. And since I got a burr on the previous stone, I don't have to check for one on this stone, because I know I'm already down to the edge. So now I'm just polishing the edge bevel. And so at this point, I know that I've already got the 400 grit scratches out. And I've got 1,000 grit scratches in there, and I'm just going to use a couple edge trailing strokes on the stone before I go to my finishing stone, just to make sure the edge is all smoothed out. There we go. So this is my finishing stone, and so on this stone, when I'm working on the edge, I'm only going to use edge trailing strokes like this. Now if I want to polish up the side of the blade a little bit farther where I thinned, I can do that like this. And you can spend as little or as long as you want polishing where you thinned. Anyway, but working on the edge again, so I'm just going to use edge trailing strokes like this, because I don't want to damage the edge by cutting into the stone with it. And after a few of them, I'm just going to take a soft piece of wood or plastic or something like that and draw the edge through it a couple times. And this just helps kind of bend over the wire edge so that you can cut it off with your next set of edge trailing strokes on your stone. And I'm just going to repeat that cycle a few times. And at this point, I should have an edge where I cannot feel any sort of burr, and it looks nice and polished. And we'll test cut it in a second here after I dry it off, and it should feel nice and sharp. So anyway, I should be done with that stone. And like I said, we'll just make sure we get all the water off it here without cutting our towel. That's why I like to pull away from the edge. And at this point, you could be done. Your knife should push cut just fine, as well as slide cut. It should shave hair. You should be able to cut into a roll of paper like that, everything like that. That being said, if you wanted to, or if you're having a little bit of trouble removing your burr, you could get yourself a smooth leather strap like this. I don't like any compound on mine. And I'd recommend setting yours actually on a flat surface instead of holding it. But anyway, you could just strap it a few times like this. There's no compound or anything like this on the leather. You could also just lay a sheet of newspaper over your waterstone and strap on that, and that would work equally well. Anyway, so after you strap it, your edge should still have plenty of bite to it. So where you can cut really into things like that, it should still push cut really well. It should pull cut really well too. So anyway, that should be all there is to it to sharpening your knife. It doesn't have to be that complicated, and with just a few minutes and a couple stones, you can have a knife that will cut anything you want in your kitchen pretty easily.